What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Carmen Vitali, here to preview every single game for week 6 in the NFL by giving you guys a PFF matchup that matters and a plus factor as well. Someone that we think could change the tide one way or another for the game. Carmen, how are we doing today, my friend?
I'm great. And I'm really, really glad to hear that everybody that being from Florida, is safe and you got your parents up with you and
Yes.
a whole host of people at your house. But it's really honestly a wonderful thing. And I'm so glad to hear that they're all okay.
Yes, hopefully everyone who is listening to this show who might have been in the wake of Hurricane Milton is doing okay. Obviously, their people are doing okay. And for anybody who's listening to this, if you can find local places to donate to, I don't have any links or anything off the top of my head, but I know that those people could really use it. It was a devastating storm, and it was 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene as well. And so those people down there in Florida have been through a lot. So if you got anything, if you got the kindness in your heart to be able to help them out in any way, shape, or form, please look out and try to do so to donate to a local place that can really help those people that are down there. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe this show can give a little bit of relief. Anybody who might be cleaning up or doing anything or wherever you're listening around the country, hopefully that this could be a fun little 2 hours here for you as we preview every single game that we have in the NFL. For week 6, we're going to be talking about a lot of different PFF statistics here on this show. If you want to be able to see all those things yourself, go over to pff.com. Get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. You see the premium stats, but you get to see so much more. Particularly, there's something really cool that we're doing here this year, and it's in-game grading. So whether it's Thursday Night Football, the games on Sunday, Monday Night Football, whatever, you can actually see us grade these players, not quite in real time. There's a little bit of a delay, but you can see sort of what PFF thinks of these players as the game is going on. Now, it's obviously live broadcast stuff, so the official grades, we got to take a look at the All-22. We got to go through rechecks and everything like that. So the in-game grades will lock about 90 minutes after the game whenever you're watching it. And then the official grades will come out on Monday, as they often do for the Sunday games that we talk about with the grade review show. But it's a really cool feature we're doing. It's a really cool feature for PFF Plus subscribers. So get yourself a PFF Plus subscription and you can see all that and so much more. Carmen, we have a very fun one here for the Thursday Night Football game that we get to preview to kick off this show. Yeah. Niners, Seattle Seahawks. I mean, this is a divisional matchup that for the last 10 years has been heated. These teams do not like each other. It's in Seattle. You know that Seattle crowd's going to be going absolutely crazy, especially coming off of a loss to the Giants that, let's face it, I don't know if a lot of Seahawks fans thought they were going to lose that game. So they're coming out. They're going to be even louder. They're going to support their team even more. It's a divisional opponent. They hate the Niners anyways. I'm curious, for this divisional matchup here, short week for these teams, what's your matchup that matters here?
It is probably the 49ers red zone offense in particular against the Seattle Seahawks red zone defense.
All right.
The Niners rank 29th in red zone percentage. And when you consider that they've lost, of the 3 combined games that they've lost by a total of 9 points, this stuff matters. Scoring amazingly matters when it comes to the 49ers in particular. And if you could just steal one more possession in the red zone that results in points, this this Niners offense could look a lot different. And honestly, their record could look a lot different. And Seattle is, 11th in red zone rate, but they are dealing with so many different injuries. Byron Murphy out. Uchenna Nwosu on IR, or expected to go on IR.
Right.
Rick Woolen even on the back level of this defense out. And then Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, Julian Love, all questionable for this game. This is a hurting unit, and this is the opportunity for the Niners to really start to get right in that specific phase of their offense, because it's going to matter a whole lot.
Yeah, I think I'll get a little bit more micro with mine. I think that that's a really good point, just overall the offenses and the defensive side of the ball there going up against one another in the red zone. But I think just overall, the Niners offensive line versus the Seattle Seahawks defensive line is going to be a big one. Mike Macdonald, new head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, defensive guy. They've played really well to start the season. There's been a little bit of ups and downs, as there always is with the defensive side of the ball, but he's going to want to throw his fastball here at the San Francisco 49ers. And I think he's going to dial up a lot of different pressures. I think Boye Mafe is questionable in this game, but it looks like he's going to play, and they need him because he leads the team in pressures. Him being back is going to be huge, especially for a Niners offensive line that, at least in my opinion, when I think about the Niners offensive line and I think about how potent the passing game could be and how great they are in the run game, like, I just think, Trent Williams on that offensive line, it's a fantastic offensive line. Well, I'm not saying they're bad in any way, shape, or form, but every single one of their starters, all 5 starting players, have given up at least 9 pressures this season, even Trent Williams. So it's a unit that we've already sort of talked about their run blocking as well. Like, their run blocking has been good, but it's the pass blocking that it's not up to that sort of caliber of dominance like they are in the run game. And so to me, especially with getting a Boye Mafe back, things being at home, again, coming off the loss, I feel like Mike Macdonald's going to give you his absolute best as a defensive play caller when he's dialing things up. That, to me, if you can really overwhelm this team, we've seen Brock Purdy do well under pressure before, but if the Seahawks can truly overwhelm them, which they might be able to, given how the Niners offensive line is played, to me, that's a big time matchup that matters. And then you take that into the red zone as well. Obviously, that matters there, like you said there too. What about a plus factor in this game? Who's a big difference maker for you, one way or the other?
Well, I know Mike Macdonald wore the hat that said "run the damn ball," but I do think
He did. He did.
the San Francisco 49ers are also going to try to do the same with Jordan Mason, who leads the league in attempts. He's second in yards. And with all of those defensive injuries, I have to think that the Niners are going to go straight at this Seattle defensive line. And especially given the fact that Brock Purdy loves play action. He does really well off play action, 22 of 28 for 347 yards and a touchdown when the Niners are running play action. And that is helped by a really good run game. And we know that Jordan Mason can be extremely productive. I just think that in order to exploit kind of the deficiencies of this Seattle defense as it currently stands, given the injuries, this is going to be a ground and pound game. You're going to try to control the line of scrimmage, control the clock as much as possible, take the Seattle crowd out of it. As someone who has been in that stadium and heard the absolute deafening crowd in Seattle, it's a wonderful, amazing place to go see a game at if you ever have the chance. But it does come down to the fact like that they matter. The Seattle 12s matter.
Yes.
So I just think to take them out of it, you got to stay on the field as long as possible.
I'm with you. And I'll go on the other side of things because, you mentioned Mike Macdonald's wearing a hat that says run the damn ball and is in the middle of the week press conference. And Mina Kimes of ESPN had a funny tweet that I agreed with, which is Mike Macdonald has the chance to do the funniest thing of all time. And that is wear a run the damn ball hat to the press conference, and then the first offensive play of the game, boom, play action, shot play, straight over the top. And I think that could be funny if they end up going.
Is he trying to establish the run just by wearing the hat? Is that what's...
Hey, you don't, as we've often said here at PFF, you don't have to run the ball to establish the run threat. Sometimes you just have to wear the hat. So it'll be interesting to see how much the hat actually influences what the linebackers do for the 49ers. I do want to stay along those lines, though, for my plus factor and talk about Kenneth Walker, because last week specifically, it is sort of ironic that he wore the hat that he did of run the damn ball. Carmen, they had 7 design runs last week against the New York Giants. Just 7. Yeah. I mean, you gotta have more. Come on, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. I understand Geno Smith's great and you want to keep the ball in his hands, but you've got to have more design runs than just 7. You got to be able to control the game a little bit more than that. So I think this is a key one, not only because we've already seen Mike Macdonald say that he wants to do it more, given how scarce it was last week, but then also you look at the 49ers run defense as well. 52.2 run defense grade against the Cardinals last week. Just a 58.3 run defense grade against all teams overall so far this season. That's 23rd in the NFL. And then specifically, when I was watching that Cardinals game, the inability to stop James Conner on the ground is why the Cardinals were able to get into scoring range late in that game in the fourth quarter. They just could not stop the run. It's been an issue for this team all season long. So to me, getting Kenneth Walker going and establishing the run as your sort of identity here in this game, even early on, I think is going to mean a lot. So let's move on from the Thursday night game to the first Sunday game that we have, which is once again another game very early in London. Very early for you, 6:30 again for Carmen local time. Ooh, rough. Again, hopefully the coffee's working pretty strong on Sunday morning. When you look at a matchup that matters for this one, it's Jags-Bears. Yeah. What do you think it really stands out to you of one that's going to tell the tale of this game?
It's got to be Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor Lawrence's connection here, and then it's Brian Thomas Jr. specifically against Jalen Johnson, which is strength on strength, right? We like to say. Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. connecting on deep throws to start the season. It's great. 11 completions of 20 or more yards, and that has Lawrence tied with Sam Darnold for the lead. And then BTJ, he's got 5 catches of 20 or more yards, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns. That all ranks in the top 3 across the board. And this is the way to kind of get going against a Bears defense that is going to try to clamp down on you. They are extremely stingy. And they talk about not wanting to allow explosive plays kind of across the board here. And in order to kind of break them, you're going to have to get some explosive plays. And we know that these games are always super wonky overseas. The Jags, I guess, are delayed getting out because of Hurricane Milton. So they're going to be arriving later into London and not having as much time to kind of acclimate to the time difference and to being jet lagged and all that other stuff. That matters as someone, again, who's done that trip. And, we left on Thursday night, got there Friday morning. Everybody was dragging during practice on a rugby pitch. And that carried over into a game where Jameis Winston threw like 5 interceptions. But we don't need to go down memory lane for that. We just know this is going to be wonky. And I really believe that in order to get this Jags offense going in particular, you're going to have to rely on that connection between Trevor Lawrence and BTJ.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think just to echo that for sort of my matchup that matters here, it's sort of, you talked about Jalen Johnson versus Brian Thomas Jr. That's definitely a major one to watch because as the Jags have wanted to remain aggressive, BTJ is the guy that they want to run things through. Trevor Lawrence has got 11 completions of 20 or more yards this year. That's tied for first with Sam Darnold, which, of course, we all expected that to be the case. Sam Darnold to be at the top of that list at the beginning of the season. 414 passing yards on such throws as well. So Lawrence is number 1 in the NFL in that category. It's what they want to do. They want to push the ball deep down the field. But I thought it was ironic, funny, however you want to look at it, that last week where they got their first win of the season, they had their lowest average depth of target. They had the lowest amount of throws of 20 yards or more. And yet they just had those couple of shot plays that made the difference. And it's felt like to this point, and even going back to the second half of last season where they were really struggling, they piled up a lot of losses. They felt like a team that was trying to build an offense around those shot plays. And I think now they're realizing we can't build the whole offense around that. It's got to be something where we just have to understand when to take our deep shots. And specifically, I think the matchup that matters is the Jags' aggressiveness and how aggressive they want to be in this game, in the passing game, versus a Bears coverage unit that even beyond just Jalen Johnson, they'll make you pay. They've got 5 interceptions this year from just their DBs, their corners and their safeties. That's 5th most in the NFL. They've got 10 incompletions, forced incompletions as a group as well. They are top 3 in coverage grade, whether you look at overall defense or just the defensive backs as well. So this is a really good coverage group for the Bears. And it's just, I think that it's a unit that can really make the Jags pay if they continue to be over aggressive and really push the ball deep down the field when it's not there. And those turnovers, kind of like what you mentioned at the beginning of the Thursday night football preview that we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, when you get that flip of possession, sometimes it could truly mean everything. So I guess Brian Thomas Jr. and Jalen Johnson, a little bit of plus factors in their own right since they were in your matchup that matters. But anybody else that stand out as a plus factor to you?
Well, for the Chicago Bears, it's the Bears' offensive line. We saw them kind of get it together against the Carolina Panthers last week, but again, that's the Carolina Panthers, and you need to make sure that this is, for real. And they are dealing with some injuries along that offensive line, but they tied for the best pass blocking grade, actually with the Jags last week at 85.9. But they were 16th in pass blocking grade in weeks 1 through 4. So they have the 8th highest pressure percentage allowed, 3rd lowest pressure percentage in week 5. So it's been kind of the tale of the first couple weeks of the season and then week 5 against the Panthers. And this is the game to kind of decide, all right, is that because you played the Carolina Panthers or is this unit getting better? And that's the biggest thing I think along this offense in general is how much are you going to allow Caleb Williams to kind of settle in, get through his progressions, take a little bit of time with the ball where he is a rookie. He's probably taking a little bit too much time to throw the ball, but that kind of comes with the territory of learning this new offense and getting comfortable in it. But he now has a ton of answers given the amount of offensive talent that the Bears have. It just is all pretty much unlocked by the offensive line, not only in pass blocking, but then you saw DeAndre Swift get going against the Carolina Panthers as well. They've kind of figured out how to use him and then switch up with Roschon Johnson in those short yardage situations. So it definitely seems like Shane Waldron is getting into the groove and kind of understanding his personnel a little bit more. But my big concern still is this offensive line and how much they're going to allow for offensively. And was this improvement real, or is it just they were playing one of the most struggling teams in the league? I don't want to call them horrible. I just want to say that they're struggling.
Look, again, all due respect, we are 5 weeks in this season, and unfortunately, we do have to have that question at this point with teams. Is like, hey, are you playing well, or were you just playing the Panthers? Because the Saints it's kind of been the story with the Saints since week one. There've been a couple of other teams like that, and I think that is the big question with Chicago. We're pretty much in lockstep here because my plus factor, your plus factor is the Bears' offensive line. My plus factor is somebody on the other side of the line who could be a big time force against him, and that's Trayvon Walker. We know that Josh Hines Allen is going to play really well on one side, but Trayvon Walker has been much more of the inconsistent pass rush presence for them. And last week specifically against the Colts, 90.4 overall grade for Trayvon Walker, single game career high for him there. 7 pressures in that game, also a single game career high. 84.2 pass rush grade, which was the second highest single graded game of his career in that category, and an 18.4 pass rush win percentage. He was a monster when it came to that speed to power stuff, really imposing his will, getting off the line of scrimmage with a ton of power, utilizing those long arms too. And so I could have sort of gone with a matchup that matters of him versus, Darnell Wright as the right tackle, because he mainly lines up on the left side of the defense. But they used him in stunt situations as well, where they have him as the looper coming across the face of guards and even getting into the center and just trying to either go up the A gap or the B gap, and using a lot of explosiveness and that momentum and speed to power that is pretty devastating. I mean, you watch last week's game from Trayvon Walker and you go, all right, even without a litany of pass rush moves, like, you can see why it was alluring to draft him number 1 overall. Now he's still getting the moves down, obviously. I don't know how much that's going to be a part of his game, rather than just winning by physical ability, but certainly it was able to work last week. We will see if it's able to work against a Bears offensive line that has been up and down quite a bit this season. This might be the game of the week, the game that I think everybody's looking forward to the most. It's maybe not a primetime game this week, and that is Commanders-Ravens. We got Jaden Daniels, we got Lamar Jackson. We got these two teams that are playing really, really well, playing good football. I'm very curious what your matchup that matters in this one is.
Yeah, it really speaks to what the league thought of the Commanders leading into this season versus the surprise that they've been, given the fact that this is a game that is in the first window and probably should be in primetime at this point. I think the one that matters is how well this Washington run defense can fare against both Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Either in the beginning of the season, I was a little concerned with the fact that they weren't quite using Lamar Jackson the way I thought they were going to complement Derrick Henry and kind of force defenses to contend with 2 different runners, one of which is the quarterback, which I think is just nearly impossible. But that's really kind of changed since the beginning of the season. Lamar Jackson has 13 rushes of 10 yards or more, which is the second most in the NFL. On quarterback, or for quarterbacks, it's most period, second most period. And then Derrick Henry, 571 rushing yards. Most in the NFL. I don't think anybody's surprised about that. 318 rushing yards after contact. That is the big thing with Derrick Henry, is how much he can get after you try to tackle him, first in the beginning. So 19 missed tackles forced on runs. That's 4th in the NFL. It's pretty incredible what he's able to do. And then you add on the fact that you have a legitimate running threat at quarterback. Commanders' run defense this season, 22nd. They ranked 22nd in the league, 24 rushes allowing 10 or more yards, which is the most of any team. And they have the second worst explosive run play percentage allowed, which is at 20.5%. So 20.5% of these runs are explosive coming against the Commanders defense. And that's concerning when you have the most explosive rushing offense with the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'll just say my plus factor now, just for conversation and transition's sake. I mean, it is Derrick Henry. I mean, to me, he is the ultimate sort of game wrecker in this one, where I think that it's not like these two teams are perfect going up against each other on both sides of the ball, but it really is a strength versus a weakness, and how much that strength can overcome the Commanders' run defense. To me, that could just be something that we'll talk about. All the national highlights are going to be about Jaden Daniels versus Lamar Jackson. But if Derrick Henry has his way, as he is leading the NFL in rushing so far through 5 weeks, if he has his way, I don't even know how much the Commanders' offense is going to be able to make up for it. I don't even know how much Lamar is going to think we think that he is going to have to do in this game. 318 rushes after contact for Derrick Henry. That is second most in the NFL. 19 missed tackles forced on runs. That is fourth in the NFL. And then he leads the league in rushing with 571 rushing yards. So he's a top 5 back in every sense of the word. And Washington has struggled against the run so far this season. I think an area that, to me, the matchup that matters specifically, and I sort of found this stat because I've been watching Jaden Daniels do this a lot more this season than he did at LSU, which is throw on the run. We've talked about that here before on this show, and I'm emphasizing it here as the matchup that matters because Daniels has been excellent when throwing on the run, and he really did not do it a lot at LSU. A lot of people think, oh, mobile guy, Heisman Trophy winner. You see the crazy scramble runs from him,
right?
And you kind of assume like, oh man, he could be a great throwing quarterback on the run as well. Maybe when we were watching him at LSU, it was sort of like, okay, and I was building a scouting report. Sure, that's possible for him. We didn't see him do it a lot. He had 15 total attempts when scrambling last year. 15, whole season, a whole Heisman Trophy winning season. 15 total attempts when scrambling. This year, he's already got way more than that. Through 5 weeks, he has an 87.5 passing grade when scrambling. He's already 8 for 7, has 2 big-time throws, and most importantly, 16 first downs, either as a runner or a passer when it comes to getting out of the pocket and unscrambled plays. That is first in the NFL. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because it ties into a matchup that matters, because the Baltimore Ravens defense have a 57.6 coverage grade against quarterbacks on scramble plays. That's just 24th in the NFL. They've also given up 6 plays, passing plays specifically, of 15 yards or more to quarterbacks when scrambling. That's the second most in the NFL. So not only is an area where we can give Jaden Daniels some praise, specifically against the Baltimore Ravens, they have not covered mobile quarterbacks passing outside of the tackles. And Jaden's the best one in the NFL that we have seen so far 5 weeks into the season. So that to me is a big time matchup that matters. What's your plus factor in this one?
Yeah, it goes right along with that. And I'm glad that you called out the just kind of blossoming we've seen from Jaden Daniels, because that was my biggest concern with him coming into the league was, can you look for additional throwing lanes when you're on the run? Because he's quite frankly not big enough to do what he did at LSU, which is just kind of tuck the ball and get those extra yards with his legs. And he was taking a lot of hits as a result. And he's not that big of a guy. And against NFL competition, I was just really concerned about it. So to see this blossoming, he's an absolute menace when it comes to scrambling around in the backfield. Trying to contain him is the most important part for this Baltimore defense, which is why my plus factor is Roquan Smith. And he was very confident this week when he was talking to reporters saying, well, Jaden Daniels has never seen a defense like ours. He said that on Wednesday. And he's rightfully so, kind of being a little bit more confident against a rookie quarterback, given that the Baltimore defense, and Baltimore in particular, is 15-2 against rookie quarterbacks. So they seem to be able to kind of confuse and get these guys off their game a little bit. But again, in the way that maybe Jaden Daniels hasn't seen a defense like Baltimore's, I don't know that Baltimore has really seen a rookie quarterback like him, because he's doing all of these crazy things for a rookie quarterback to start the season, and it seems to be here to stay. It also seems like Cliff Kingsbury knows exactly how to use him and exactly how much of a leash to give Jaden Daniels, given the fact that he is now throwing on the run for all of those things that you just said. Mm-hmm. Containing him is the number one priority of this Baltimore defense, and Roquan Smith in particular is going to be one of those guys that I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up spying Jaden Daniels, trying to kind of follow him around and set that edge a little bit more when Jaden tries to scramble out of the pocket. He might meet Roquan Smith, and that's something that Roquan Smith likes to do. So he's got, not to mention, I mean, Roquan Smith has a really great rapport with the guys in front of him, Nnamdi Madubuike being one of them, who is getting a ton of pressure from that interior on that defensive line. So the way that this Ravens defense can work together up front in particular to contain Jaden Daniels makes it my plus factor.
There you go. I like it. I think that there's two players in Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith who could be big time plus factors in how you defend Jaden Daniels in this game. Let's go to Cardinals Packers next. Cardinals traveling to Green Bay for this one to take on the Green Bay Packers. You just kind of finished up your point about plus factor, so I can start this one with my matchup that matters. I think it's the Cardinals offensive line versus the Packers pass rush, and this is kind of a boring one, but. Yeah. It's more of the Cardinals offensive line has been doing a pretty good job blocking so far this season. They're 12th in pass blocking grade as a team, and they're 11th in total pressures allowed. And when I say 11th, I mean 11th fewest. So they're almost top 10 in mitigating pressures allowed. So it's a group that is top 12 in both of those categories. And they're going up against a Green Bay Packers pass rush that has really struggled this season. And my matchup that matters is sort of, hey, if the Cardinals do what is expected here, then I think that they probably win this game. If nothing changes with the Packers pass rush, if it is more of the same of what we have seen over the last 5 weeks, I think the Cardinals will win this football game because I think Kyler Murray's too good and he's playing well, and we've already seen the ceiling from him 5 weeks into the year. So I think the Cardinals win that if that's the case. But if the Packers have their best game yet, getting after the passer, pressuring Kyler Murray, even a guy who has a lot of escapability like he does, well, then we've got an even ball game, and that even might be what sways this in the Packers' direction. But when you look at the Packers' pass rush right now, 59.8 pass rush grade, it's just 25th in the NFL, 32.8 pass rush win percentage, also 25th in the NFL, 63 total pressures, that's just 21st. And then Rashawn Gary, the guy who is supposed to be leading them in all of these categories, is on pace for career lows in pass rush grade, pass rush win percentage, pressures, and sacks. It is not good enough right now in Green Bay up front. And if they can't figure it out and the Cardinals continue to play well in this one, like I said, I'm giving the edge to the Cardinals. But if it's the best version of the Packers pass rush we've seen yet this season, okay, now we're talking about a dogfight probably till the very end, in my opinion. So that to me is the matchup that matters. But what about you?
Well, I'm going to go actually then to my plus factor, because my plus factor, in fact, was the Green Bay defensive line and seeing if they can get pressure up front. They can overwhelm this Cardinals offensive line. I mean, this is kind of where you're seeing the change in scheme matter for Green Bay. In Jeff Hafley's scheme, he introduced a 4-3 defense to Green Bay for the first time in 15 years. And that means less than it ever has, given how fluid defensive schemes are these days and how much teams spend in their nickel package. They don't really spend as much time in base as they used to. But when it matters is, all right, this is the personnel you have to work with. And is Rashawn Gary really a 4-3 defensive end? No, he's probably better in a 3-4 situation where he's more of an outside backer. And that's why I think you're seeing this lull in pressure up front, is because they just haven't exactly figured out how to get pressure with 4. That is, to me, the biggest sway for this Green Bay defense in general, because, again, they've been really good at taking the ball away, but you can help that even further if you get to the quarterback or you force some panic throws, errant throws, stuff like that. You can create more opportunities for your back level in particular. And that leads into kind of my matchup that matters here, which is Xavier McKinney versus Kyler Murray in particular. Xavier McKinney has been this Packers defense and has been the reason that this Packers defense has been successful. You see, he's leading the league in overall grade, 90.8, 5 interceptions. He has had an interception in every game that he is a Packer. And actually, hat tip to Kay Adams here, he has 6 interceptions in his last 6 games going back to last season, which ties the NFL record. And if he gets another interception against Kyler Murray, he will then break it and be in sole possession of the NFL record for most consecutive games with an interception. That is an incredible tear that he is on. That is why you go out and you pay a ton of money for a safety like Xavier McKinney. But at this point, he is the reason that your defense is successful, because you have the most takeaways in the league, 8 of the 12 are interceptions. And then when you consider 5 of those 8 are Xavier McKinney alone, It's why, you're able to limit points, you're able to limit possessions, you're able to kind of give the ball back to your offense, which should be getting back up to speed with Jordan Love back in the lineup. I want to see this happen for Xavier McKinney because he's just been such an incredible player for them. But the defensive line can really work in his favor and help him out there, which is why they're my plus factor. But I really want to see what he can do against what Xavier McKinney can do against Kyler Murray.
Our do-it-all everything person here at PFF, Dave Salfaro, who is also an elite researcher, while you were saying that, he's watching the show, and he just messaged me to remind me, Xavier McKinney has more interceptions than 25 NFL teams do right now. That's what we're talking about here. That's the dominance. Dalton Wasserman, when we do the PFF grades release show, he said this week once again, he was like, this is why this was my favorite free agency signing of anybody. Now, I think everybody kind of liked the Xavier McKinney signing when he went to the Packers because we figured that it would line up well with the Jeff Hafley defense and what he wanted to do and how important that was going to be. But holy cow, even the Packers could not have expected that this is the very best of the very best of the return that you were getting for a player that was obviously very coveted when he was going through free agency. My plus factor in this one, I'll say the obvious one here. I'll get to the duh. It is Jordan Love. You look at Jordan Love and it's been a massive roller coaster since he has come back from injury, right? He's got 613 passing yards in the NFL, which is fifth most. So he's top 5 over the last 2 weeks. But he also has 4 turnover-worthy plays, which are tied for the fifth most. So he is top 5 in a category that you love. All right, potent offense, pushing the ball deep down the field, getting those passing yards. But he's also top 5 when putting the ball in harm's way. And so it feels a little bit like the first half of last year for Jordan Love, where there was just a lot of good and a lot of things that you wish were better. And then the second half of the season, really week 10 on, he was an elite quarterback consistently. And I think obviously, the knee is getting a little bit healthier. He's trusting that. But of course, even beyond the trench battle that I talked about with the Cardinals offensive line and the Packers defensive line, how Jordan Love plays in this game could mean the world because it's a difference of how potent this team is going to be. And we saw even after the Vikings got a really big lead the last time that they were in Green Bay, how they were able to storm back, and they were able to do that because Love gives them the ability to do that. So I think that he to me has to be the true definition of a plus factor here in this game. Texans and Patriots. Drake May getting the start here in this game, making his debut. I see the face. I see the shaking of the head there, Carmen. It's a tough matchup. There is no doubt about it. I will say my matchup that matters just to sort of get it out of the way because it's the obvious. It's the one that everybody talked about, but we have to say it because it is. We can't be disingenuous to the show just because everybody's talking about it. Patriots offensive line versus the Texans defensive line. The Patriots, 83 pressures allowed, which is the second most in the league so far this season. 48.5 PFF pass blocking grade as a unit. That is third worst in the NFL. They're a bottom 3 offensive line in a lot of different categories, and they are going up against a team that is 9th in total pressures in the Texans defensive line, and they've got 2 great ones in Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter on the edges. Both of those guys with 21 pressures already this season. So it's tough. It's a tough debut for Drake May. I wonder if the Patriots are just thinking to themselves, hey, there's never really a quote unquote perfect time to play a rookie quarterback. At least he's at home. And I also wonder if the Patriots, maybe ownership, the front office could feel the fans' lack of passion for this season growing, or should I say diminishing. I see that passion for this season diminishing as the weeks have gone on, and they want to just try to reinvigorate the Patriots pass rush or the Patriots fan base here by putting Drake May in there. So, he played behind a tough offensive line with the UNC Tar Heels over the last couple of years when he was a starter there, and so he's got a little bit of familiarity, sort of running for his life at times, but this might be a different animal. This will be his biggest challenge yet, no doubt about it. But what's your matchup that matters here?
Yeah, I would say Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter are a different animal, even from other NFL defensive ends. That was my plus factor, was the Patriots offensive line, because I saw that you had that as the matchup that matters, but I just wanted to reiterate it. And it's very curious to me that this is the time that you decided that you were going to throw out your rookie quarterback when I make the face, and I'm really hesitant about it because we've just seen that the development of your franchise quarterback is now on the line, and we've seen so many times how getting hit early can affect these quarterbacks in the long term. I mean, you look at guys like Sam Darnold, who had the narrative of seeing ghosts when he was with the Jets and how long it took for him to come out the other side. Justin Fields, same thing in Chicago. Bryce Young in Carolina last season in his rookie year. I mean, this really shatters these guys' confidence.
Right.
And that's not how you want to start your career. And there's a very few guys that kind of come out the other side. And so I'm really concerned because I really like Drake May coming out of UNC. He was a really tough player, youngest of, D1 athlete boys. I think that matters when it comes to how tough you are. And I have no doubt about Drake May's toughness. I just don't know if this was perhaps the week to do it. And then to announce it on Tuesday and then not force the Texans to have to prepare for multiple outcomes in this game, prepare for multiple quarterbacks. I mean, when you're talking gamesmanship and stuff, that stuff matters. And if you have to kind of split your time in deciding on whether or not you're going to get Drake May or Jacoby Brissett, who are different quarterbacks, I don't know why you wouldn't have tried to do that to help out Drake May as much as possible.
See, now this again makes me think, was it an ownership thing? Like, was it a front office thing? Like, are you saying, hey, and make the announcement, sell the tickets, get people into the stadium. We don't want to see the stadium half empty for this game. I wonder. Obviously, it's also okay, you make the announcement so he gets all the first team reps, but even that, like, media only sees a portion of practice. Like, you can still have him work with most of the ones when the media can't watch practice. So
there are ways to keep this under wraps.
This might be an ownership driven thing. It might be an ownership driven.
I have to think it is, because I think any head coach is going to say, can we just, keep this on the DL for as long as possible so that we force Houston into kind of give him any advantage you possibly can going against Houston defense that is just phenomenal and aggressive. And again, has Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. But I'm going to look towards something a little bit more down the line, I guess, for my matchup that matters, which is New England's passing defense against these Houston wide receivers. Because I guess if you can limit the amount of points that CJ Stroud and his receivers are scoring, you increase your chances. But I mean, the matchup that matters that we already talked about, obviously, is the number one. This is just kind of secondary and down the line. Pats have allowed the 8th highest EPA per play in coverage, so that doesn't really super bode well already. They're middle of the pack when it comes to coverage grade. They're allowing a 69.4% completion rate. And the Texans lead the NFL in receiving first downs. They have the 4th most receiving yards after the catch at 739. What's more than that is they have the 6th most receiving yards after contact even, which is 280. So not only is CJ Stroud getting the ball to his receivers in space, and those receivers are creating separation to get the yards after the catch, but even when you try to bring them down, they're still getting more yards. And that is a really tough thing to contend with. You're going to have to be super aggressive and physical when it comes to, your coverage. And that is something that we have not seen from this Patriots defense. They've really just been middle of the pack here. And in order to have a chance in this game, outside of how well you protect Drake May, you are going to have to try to limit the amount of points that CJ Stroud and this Texans offense can put on the board.
Yeah, and I'll sort of, mine goes along with that, because my plus factor in this game is Tank Dell, and I'll get to Tank Dell in a second, but I think it's an interesting matchup because Nico Collins now on IR, right? So you don't necessarily have to worry about Nico Collins, which is good if you're the Patriots. And Christian Gonzalez has also been balling for them. And so if you say, okay, we're going to have Gonzalez shadow Diggs, then if you get the 2024 version of Tank Dell, I don't know how much the Patriots are afraid of that. Now, if you get the 2023 version, that's still a problem, because when you look at how Tank Dell has been playing this year versus last year, before he got hurt last year, 24.0 threat percentage, which if you're new to the show, it's basically wide receiver usage. How often are you targeted per route that you are running? So 24% of the time that Tank Dell was in there and he was running a route, he was getting targeted. So a fourth of the time. 83.8 receiving grade, and then 2.32 yards per route run. This year, 15% threat percentage, so almost down 10% from what it was last year. Just a 61.6 receiving grade as opposed to an 83.8. And yards per route run cut in half, 1.02 as opposed to that 2.32 that we saw last year. So it's just not the same Tank Dell. He just has not had that chemistry. And there's only one football, and you added yourself Stephon Diggs, and obviously Nico Collins is who he is. So there's only so many times that you can look his way, but he was much more a factor last year. And so which version of Tank Dell are we getting? To me, that is going to be a telltale factor in this game. Because once again, I've got a lot of faith in Christian Gonzalez to play even a good one in Stephon Diggs. But what can you do outside of that? What can Tank Dell do outside of that? I think is going to matter a lot here in this game. Speaking of wide receiver production and scoring, whether it's a TD, tutty, take it to the house, in for 6, whatever you are calling a touchdown, one thing is for sure, and that's that touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams, defense, doesn't matter how they score them. You just want to bet on touchdowns, right? DraftKings is the number one place to bet on touchdowns. And if you're ready to place your first bet, try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. I just talked about how much of a difference maker Tank Dell was going to be. If you think that Tank Dell is about to resurge in this offense with Nico Collins down, there you go. New DraftKings customers bet just $5 on a touchdown bet, and you get just $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. It is the number one place to bet on touchdowns. You download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF for new customers. Get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call Win-800-GAMBLER. In New York, it's 877-8-HOPE-NY, or you can just text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, visit dkng.com. dkng.co/FTBALL. Continuing with the 1 p.m. slate, we have Buccaneers at Saints, and with Marshawn Lattimore being healthy, this is essentially the 7th Rocky movie, as Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans will be on the field at the same time, which is always must-watch TV. Other than that matchup, Carmen, what do you have as the matchup that matters here?
Yeah, I wanted to say Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans, but it's just the best when teams and players in particular have an actual rivalry. Like, these guys actually don't like each other, and that is so rare in today's NFL. Usually, I mean, and it makes sense with the amount of movement that these guys have between teams. It doesn't really make sense to actually hate anybody. You're all in the NFL brotherhood. But that is not the case with Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans. Mike really hates Marshawn. And
it is, again, I think a lot of people agree with you. Did they take it a little too far per the NFL rules and sportsmanship? All right, maybe a little bit, but the juice is what we love, right? Like, that added mentality of just like, I don't like this dude. And sometimes it's going to go a little bit after the whistle, a little bit before the whistle. And that's the understood. That's the understood matchup that matters, is who might throw the first haymaker or who might not, right? To get a 15-yard penalty here and there. Right. So we'll see if we have anything there. I'm curious as to how much Marshawn lines up with Mike Evans, because the secondary for the New Orleans Saints, this isn't my matchup that matters. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head here. But I think that, just all of these DBs, I'll get into it a little bit more, but what's your matchup that matters here?
My actual matchup that matters is the Bucs defensive line against the Saints O-line. Considering that the Bucs defensive line is getting more healthy, you have Kalijah Kancey back at practice, and you have, on the other side, you have the Saints really lacking in health as far as their offensive line goes. They don't have Eric McCoy, and Cesar Ruiz and Lucas Patrick both dealing with injuries. What's really interesting to me is, so Eric McCoy, this will be their second game without him, but they had the 4th highest EPA per play in pass blocking weeks 1 through 3 with Eric McCoy. After Eric McCoy went down, the Saints dropped to 20th in EPA per play, pass blocking wise. So you see that the interior O-line is just really, really struggling here. 29.0 blocking grade in week 5, which ranked dead last. 24.0 pass blocking grade, also dead last. And they were first in pressures allowed. So this is all something that the Bucs can take advantage of, given the fact that they are now healthy and they have a couple of monsters on the interior of their defensive line, not only in Kalijah Kancey, but Vita Vea. We've seen Logan Hall even come on a lot for that interior and getting pressure, being a little bit of a menace on that. So it's helping out the guys on the outside for this Bucs defense, and that front in general is just really hard to contend with. And that is the task is going to be up to the Saints' interior offensive line, which is struggling so badly in the last couple of weeks of the season, where Eric McCoy has gone down.
Yeah, I mean, Kancey's the plus factor for me, right? I mean, the fact that he is back and what he could be as a pass rusher for this team is huge, because just in week 5, now I understand, like, Chiefs have a good defensive line. Steve Spagnuolo is a great defensive coordinator when it comes to dialing up pressure and making life hell for offensive linemen. And, they've got a guy named Chris Jones who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I understand all that. But even with that being the case, the interior offensive line, whatever combination of guards and centers that they had out there in week 5 against the Chiefs, Saints interior 3, 29.0 blocking grade as a team, last in the NFL that week. 24.0 pass blocking grade, last in the NFL that week. And 13 pressures allowed, first in the NFL that week. Meaning once again last. So with Kalijah Kancey coming back, Vita Vea obviously in the middle, that's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for the New Orleans Saints, who are now starting Spencer Rattler as well. That's Rattler's kind of a plus factor in his own right, just because how he can deal with that interior pressure is going to mean a lot, because, as they say, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And if you are a defensive tackle and you could just run straight at the football, you're going to get there first. And especially if you win clean, like Kancey's been able to do when he has been healthy at the NFL level. So to me, that's a big time plus factor. Yeah, my matchup that matters, it wasn't necessarily Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore, but it is the bigger picture of the Buccaneers wide receivers versus the Saints defensive back, because it's not always a strength on strength with this group, even for as long as Chris Godwin and Mike Evans have been a duo, even for as long as, guys like Tyrann Mathieu and Marshawn Lattimore have been in this defense. Secondary coverage, defense overall, it's very up and down. But going into this game, the secondary group of the New Orleans Saints is a big-time strength of their team. And what we have seen from the Bucs passing attack, so are their wide receivers as well. When you look at Chris Godwin, he has the third highest PFF receiving grade at an 86.9. He's got 25 catches, gaining a first down. That's second in the NFL. He's got 9 catches of 15 yards or more. Mike Evans, he's tied for first in receiving touchdowns with Jamar Chase with 5. He's got 4 red zone TDs, which is first. And so it's all working perfectly for how the Bucs want to use their wide receivers. And it's also working perfectly, it feels like, with how the Saints want to be with their aggressive defensive backs, particularly their corners. So not only do these guys not like each other, they're both really good right now. They're both full confidence. It's not like, we're reeling one way or the other. They're both of these groups are going into this game thinking, we're going to be the reason why our teams win. And I think that's what's going to make for a very, very fun matchup that matters with strength on strength there. But who's your plus factor in this one before we move on?
Well, speaking of guys that are returning for the Buccaneers, could be Antoine Winfield Jr., he returned to practice this week. He's practicing in limited capacity, but if I know anything about Antoine, Tweez, he is going to try to get into this game come hell or high water. The Bucs have everything to play for too, with everything going on back home. Their families and their dogs, their pets, everybody was evacuated to New Orleans. The team set up hotel rooms in Orlando for people that were staying behind. This has been just kind of a really tumultuous week for the Bucs, and they know how to harness it. And that's not just Antoine, but that's the whole team. I do think that that's going to provide just a ton of juice, though, for this Buccaneers defense, which they've allowed 6.4 yards per play when they're using in their base personnel, which is 4 defensive backs. And in order to kind of combat that, you're going to need one of those 4 defensive backs to be Antoine Winfield Jr. That's the second most among the 29 defenses to use base personnel on at least 10% of their plays, which the Bucs do stay in their base quite a bit. So that's just kind of an opportunity here for Antoine to really make a difference. And it's why he would make such a difference if he returns back to this lineup, because when he is healthy, when he is back, he is one of the best, if not the best safeties in this league. And he's going to have all of the juice in the world coming back. And I think it's just going to do wonders for this defense.
Yeah. And the rookie quarterback factor as well. I'm
confusing
excited
him.
to see Spencer Rattler. I really am. But, if Antoine Winfield Jr. is back there, it makes it all the more difficult. You'll second guess things. You'll be a little bit more hesitant. Can I throw the
Yep.
ball deep down the field? Now, they got good ones, right? Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. Those are great guys to rely on and give them a chance deep down the field. But there's a difference when Winfield Jr. is back there and when he is not. So I think that's an excellent call up by you. I think Cansey's getting a lot of the publicity of him coming back. But if Winfield Jr. can come back as well, that's huge. Browns, Eagles. This one's in Philadelphia. It's a matchup that Philadelphia, it feels like they're just getting stronger, obviously, with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith coming back. Lane Johnson's coming back as well. And so this is an interesting matchup here with a Browns team that is really, we thought it was really talented going into the season. We weren't sure what we were going to get, but at this point in time, it's just been disappointing for the Cleveland Browns. So it's also, I would say, been disappointing for the Eagles, but they're the ones that have some talented people returning.
Right.
Do any of those factor into your matchup that matters, or what do you got for this one, Carmen?
Of course it does. The trenches matter in this game, I think, more than anything. And the Eagles O-line in particular versus this Browns defensive line, strength on strength. Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson are the third and fourth best graded tackles by PFF. This team also has the best run blocking grade. They have the eighth best pass blocking grade at 74.5. And they have the second lowest run block defeated percentage, so they don't get beat. They are the 12th most penalized offensive line, which I thought was very interesting because that is basically the only people that can beat the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. This is absolutely where it comes down to, all right, how can you protect against this Browns defensive line, which is very good, even outside of Myles Garrett. They're 13th in total pressures, third in pass rush win percentage at 56.5. And then, Myles Garrett has the second best pass rush win percentage behind just Aiden Hutchinson from the Detroit Lions. So this is where the production is. This is why, on the whole, the Browns have been disappointing, but I mean, the strength of their team is the strength of their team. And that's this defensive line. That's Myles Garrett, who is just an absolute game wrecker. So how clean can you keep Jalen Hurts? How much can you allow for Saquon Barkley to get involved in this game and run on this Browns defense? I think there's an opportunity there. I'll get into that with my plus factor. But as far as this matchup goes, or the matchup that matters most to me is in the trenches, and it's the Eagles offensive line versus Browns defensive line.
I agree with you that it's definitely in the trenches. I'll flip sides to the other side of things, talking about the Eagles defensive line versus the Cleveland Browns offensive line. And the reason why I think that it matters so much is because going into the season, we figured that the Browns offensive line was once again going to be a strength of their team. And I think, unfortunately, they've been bitten really hard by the injury bug, right? Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin's not playing. Either Posic's now hurt. And so you're playing, backup guys, backup to the backup players. And even the ones who were out there, like Joel Bitonio, I mean, it's just a different unit that's there. Jedrick Wills is kind of coming back from injury, and he really has not looked all that effective. He has not looked the same as he did earlier on in his career. And so all of a sudden, the offensive line for the Browns, which was really their bread and butter. It was how they were formed as a team, as an offense, is now not only not a strength, it's a weakness for them. It's a major weakness, and it's going up against a group that for the last 3 or 4 years, we have consistently seen the Philadelphia Eagles devote all sorts of cap resources and NFL draft resources to have multiple waves of pass rushers, not just a front four, but it's almost a front 8 that they can send you at any time and any combination of these players. Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter, Brandon Graham still there, the veteran Brandon Graham, but Moro Ojomo as well from Texas, who's playing well. They got Zach Bond. Bryce Huff hasn't caught fire yet, but there's a chance that could certainly be this week. So I think that this could be a big time game breaker for the Eagles if their defensive line could take advantage of a beat up Cleveland Browns offensive line. I think it's a reason why we have seen such poor numbers from them offensively. My plus factor in this one, I'll just kind of combine it right here, is simply if Deshaun Watson can make up for that offensive line. And so far this season, he absolutely has not been able to. One game he played very well, but the rest of them he has played very poorly. 63.1 PFF passing grade, that's just 24th among QBs, and the EPA per play for the Cleveland Browns offense as a whole is not good, especially with Nick Chubb not being in there as well. So to me, Deshaun's the plus factor because he's the only one who can mitigate the struggles of that offensive line. And it's hard to ask a quarterback to do those things. I'm very aware of what I'm asking. It's tough, but that's ultimately why he's the big plus factor, because without that, And with the returning stars that the Eagles have, especially with them at home, I don't know how Cleveland keeps up with Philly's offense with the return of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And so Deshaun is really, it's all on his shoulders for that offense to be able to keep up. But what do you think? What's a plus factor for you?
Well, on the Eagles side of the ball, it's got to be Saquon. He's been fantastic. He ranks
Yeah.
third in rushing yards, tied for fifth in rushing touchdowns. 18 rushes, gaining a first down. So 4 rushes, gaining 20 plus yards, which is tied for third in the league. And he's going up against the Browns defense that has allowed the eighth most rushing yards, 709 ahead of week 6. And they've allowed the second most rushing touchdowns, which is 8. They've also allowed the second most rushes over 10 yards with 23. So this is an absolute opportunity to get Saquon heavily involved in this Eagles offense in general, and that takes pressure off of Jalen Hurts, takes pressure off the offensive line, which again, you talk about Lane Johnson coming back. You just we rely on those guys so much because they're so good. But if any opportunity you have to kind of take the pressure off of them to hold, Jalen Hurts to hold the ball, throw it downfield, do all that, you can absolutely control this game if you get Saquon going. And I think there's a really good chance of that, given the fact that the Browns defense just hasn't been good against the run.
There's too many factors against Cleveland to win this game, which of course means they're going to win the game, right? I mean, like every time that on paper all directions point to one team, you know how the NFL works. It just means that Cleveland is somehow, some way going to win in ways that we did not think.
That happened. I mean, Sirianni is already incredibly on thin ice.
If they lose this game,
that market, if they lose this game, if the Eagles lose this game, there will be riots in the streets of Philadelphia.
Philly's already out of the playoffs. Those fans are ready to riot anyways. If the Eagles lose to the Browns, that's gonna be bad. It might be nuclear.
I know they're really down bad with the Phils loss, so
don't need to compound that with an Eagles loss. Browns fans certainly hope that that's the case, but Browns still have the Guardians. I think I'm not a baseball guy. I haven't picked. I don't know. Are they still in it? I don't know. Tyler, let me know if they're still in it. Our producer. I'm talking to my producer. I'm not just talking about somebody else. All right, so Colts at Titans is the next game I want to get to. Another divisional matchup that we have here. I've got a very micro matchup that matters here. So I would rather you start with this one because I think that you're going to talk about one that is less niche and one that I think could maybe mean a little bit more. But I think that there's a specific matchup that I want to get to. But what is your matchup that matters?
You're being the hipster here, and I'll
totally being the hipster here. I am being the PFF ultimate. I went and I found this small, minute point in our database, and I was like, this is going to matter. And I'll talk about it after you talk about
it. All right. Well, I'm going to talk about kind of the overall thing that probably matters, which is this Titans defensive line going against the Colts offensive line, because the Titans pass rush just quite frankly hasn't been there. And this is a Colts offensive line that is really, really good. The Titans have created 38 pressures, which is the fewest in the league, despite the fact that their rookie, T'Vondre Sweat, is the 4th highest graded interior defensive lineman. And I actually got to talk to some of the Bears offensive linemen that week 1 game against the Titans. And across the board, they were just like, yeah, T'Vondre Sweat's the real deal. And once he learns how to use his hands, he's going to be an absolute nightmare. But the Colts offensive line is ready for this. They have an 85.2 PFF grade, which is the first among offensive line groups. And they rank 2nd in pass blocking grade, 2nd in run blocking grade. I mean, this is just a solid unit across the board. And they have 2 of the 3 highest graded guards in the NFL. We know Quentin Nelson and Will Freeze, however you say that.
Fries. You had it right. You got to trust
right. That's what I thought.
You got to trust the gut.
Fries, and you just think French fries. It's getting close to lunchtime for me. Whatever. This is it's an incredibly sound unit, and you've got potentially, got Joe Flacco behind there, but you have to feel good about that because of the fact that they are so incredibly solid. Can the Titans affect them? Can they get to the quarterback? Can they be better in this pass rush, which they have not shown so far this season, despite the fact that they have a lot of talent along that defensive line? So it's very interesting to see how this kind of develops and if this just continues to be a trend for the Tennessee Titans.
Dave Salfaro, once again, messaging me, listening to the show, just wanted me to know, as a Michigan man himself, that Aiden Hutchinson has more pressures by himself than the Tennessee
Than
Titans do
the Titans,
as a
yes.
whole team.
Well,
So
Aiden Hutchinson is a freak. We'll get there, Dave.
we will get
We
there.
will get
Yeah,
there.
this will
Trust
not be
me.
the last time that we talk about Hutchinson because he can be an absolute game wrecker for their matchup that they have. But okay, so my hipster PFF stat that I found,
Okay.
or at least
I'm so
matchup
curious.
that I was able to find here,
I'm so
is
curious.
you know, the Indianapolis Colts over the last 2 weeks specifically really been running their passing offense through Josh Downs. And I love that they've been able to do that because I was a big fan of Josh Downs when he was coming out of North Carolina. I felt like he was the type of slot receiver that was just going to thrive at the NFL level. Yes, he was smaller and sort of had that short area explosiveness and quickness to create those throwing windows, but he was also super strong at the catch point. So I felt like it was a great combination and he was going to be a fantastic pro. Over the last 2 weeks, Josh Downs, 88.2 receiving grade, best on the team, 151 receiving yards, most on the team, 35.6 threat percentage, highest on the team. So they've been going after this guy and he has been rewarding him every time they go after him. So over the last 2 weeks, they've totally emphasized the slot receiver in Josh Downs in their passing attack and how they move the ball down the field with Joe Flacco. The Tennessee Titans have allowed the fewest passing yards or receiving yards to slot receivers this season. So, not necessarily sure if this is hey, they just haven't played a guy of Josh Downs' caliber yet, or if they know something and they're really confident in how they defend the slot. But to me, that is the matchup that matters because Indianapolis, while Joe Flacco has been out there, has wanted to throw the ball in the passing offense through Josh Downs. And the Titans, so far in this season, have been the best at taking that away from teams. So, that is my hipster PFF matchup that matters there. What's a plus factor for you in this game?
I love it. Well, if the Titans are indeed really, really good at defending the slot, then you need another outside receiver to step up in the wake of the Michael Pittman Jr. injury. And that would be A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. The rookie, I think it's a great time for him to start to see a little bit more work. And he had his best game as a pro against Jacksonville last week, 4 of 7, only had 38 yards, included an 18-yard catch, but you got him on the end around two. The rush, he had a rush as well out of the backfield, taking the ball out of the backfield. So I feel like you are kind of starting to get him a little bit more involved, and this is a great time to do it, to still have those outside threats in addition to Josh Downs, because if you do all of that, then yeah, this is going to stress this Tennessee pass defense a lot. And I think that can make a huge difference for the Colts in general. And if you can protect Joe Flacco as well as this offensive line can, you're going to be able to let those longer developing routes develop. And you can potentially get the ball to a rookie that was so good at that in college at Texas.
I should have piggybacked my plus factor onto what you were saying about the Colts offensive line, because that's sort of where my mind goes with this one. Their rookie interior offensive lineman, Tanner Bortolini from Wisconsin, who has been playing at center for them while Ryan Kelly has been out with a neck injury. With Will Fries now out, their right guard, he was one of the best guards in football. He had an 86.2 overall grade. He was one of the highest guards that we had this season. And so losing him is a big deal. I'm curious if they're going to use Bortolini as sort of a fill-in for him, when Ryan Kelly gets back. I haven't checked the updated injury report, so don't yell at me. I don't know if Kelly is back. I think it was kind of up in the air the week before. I'm not sure where he's at this week. But if Kelly is back, my question is, who is the next option for them at right guard? Is it the rookie in Bortolini because he played better this past week in his second start? Do they think that he has the body type that they want? Because he's a little bit shorter, not as strong of a player as Will Fries is, but he wins with that quickness. He's smart. He understands angles. When you're at guard, though, it's different than center because you don't have that natural help. It's not about, okay, where am I helping out with a double team? You're very rarely facing a guy that's head up right in front of you, but at guard, that can happen plenty of times during the game. So does he have that kind of blocking ability moving from center out to guard? Bortolini did play right tackle and I believe right guard during his time at Wisconsin, as well as center, which he played his final year there. So there's a little bit of a precedence there, but what does that right guard spot look like with Fries going down? Is Bortolini the guy that's going to step in there? Because the Colts offensive line has been a big part of their identity. So just something to monitor if he's going to make that switch.
if you want to get hipstery, Tanner Bortolini was like my hipster pick as far as like a day two, day three center that I thought was just really good, that really didn't get enough love in the draft process leading up to this year's draft. I was really all in on just from watching him in the center position at Wisconsin. And again, Wisconsin is just an incredible offensive line factory, just trenches in general. But those good Midwestern boys coming out of Wisconsin, the corn-fed Midwestern boys. But then in talking to guys like coaches and stuff that were monitoring that position in particular, so many of them were like, yeah, that's kind of an under the radar pick that I really, really like him at center. And I think he could translate really well at the NFL level. So it will be very interesting to see if they indeed keep him at center if they need to, or do they kick him back out? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to see.
Walt in the chat saying, Trevor, does it matter who plays right guard for the Colts? Of course it does, Walt. Football's won and lost in the trenches. Come on. You know that. You're a GM. You let us know all the time in the chat. You got to build through the trenches. It's important. All right, before we get to the next game, this show is sponsored by our friends over at BetterHelp. Think of a time recently when you didn't feel like you could be your full self. Sometimes it feels like you're hiding behind a mask, right? October, it's Halloween. It's a season of wearing masks and costumes, things like that. But for some of us, we feel like we're wearing a mask all the time. Feel like we hide more than we need to at work and social settings, around the family, whatever it is. Therapy, it can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you can take off the mask and be free. Masks, they're for Halloween, not for the emotions, right? Well, I've been doing therapy for over a year and a half, and it has been exactly that. It's allowed me to be so much more confident in exactly who I am in all situations, and it's been wonderful. Sometimes it's been, things I've had to deal with, but other times it's been sometimes reminding myself that, hey, you know what? Everything's going all right, and there's 4 reasons, because you're doing the work, you're putting yourself in the right situation. It's not perfect, but you're always able to recognize the strengths that you have and get better. Therapy is a really great, useful way to better understand how your mind actually works and become more aware of your own patterns, behaviors, all that good stuff. And it's a good way to improve them too. It's useful for everybody, not just people that are struggling with something specific. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is convenient, it's flexible, it's entirely online, and it's a way for you to get therapy that is right for you. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. You can take off that mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/PFF to get 10% off your first month. Visit BetterHelp, HELP.com/PFF. Chargers Broncos. A absolute defensive slugfest to open up the 4:00 window here. Carmen, what is your matchup that matters here for this one?
Yeah, it's this Chargers O-line going against the Denver defense, because despite the bye week that the Chargers were on, they are still not all the way healthy, especially along that offensive line. Rashawn Slater is still a limited participant on Wednesday. I think actually the Chargers had 7 guys total sit out of practice on Wednesday. Not what you want to see after the team's had a week off. And then especially when they're going to get a test against this Denver defense, who I think has been one of the most pleasant surprises of this season so far. I mean, you and I have talked about just how much they're getting out of their defensive front in particular over the last couple of weeks. This was a team that went into this year with a lot of unknowns, and you're seeing guys step up all over the place, like Zach Allen in that defensive front. And then you see in this last game, obviously we all know what Pat Surtain is capable of. You knew that teams were probably going to try and pick on whoever was playing opposite him. That's been the case with Riley Moss, but then he comes away with his first interception of his career this last game. And you're having these guys kind of step up, and Pat Surtain is posting a photo from White Men Can't Jump with him and Riley Moss's faces photoshopped on it. I mean, the vibes are high in Denver. I actually had the opportunity to speak to one of their defensive coaches this last week, just kind of about how this turnaround and if anybody was surprised there along that coaching staff. And he echoed the sentiment that vibes are really good. The team really believes in what Vance Joseph is doing schematically. They're having a lot of fun. And they're really taking to it. They're really buying in. And that's exactly what you want to see for a unit that this team has to rely on, given the fact that you do still have a young developing quarterback who isn't quite there. Bo Nix is doing exactly what Sean Payton is asking him to do, but that's not a whole lot right now. And so the reason that the Broncos have had the success they've had so far this season really comes down to this defense, which is first in EPA per play, first in pass rush win rate, third in success rate. That's all according to NGS. And their third and fourth down conversion rate, fourth best in the league. I mean, you can just go through the stats here, and they are top 5, top 3, top 2. I mean, it's really pretty incredible to see what this defense has been capable of throughout this season so far, given that there are guys that hadn't started a game prior to this season that are now
Right.
stepping up for this team.
Yeah, no, it's been fun to watch the Broncos play really well. And we figured that this was a group that was still going to take a little bit of time to gel, but certainly the defensive side of the football, the offense is still sort of coming along. And I think the offense is fine, but like I think the record is a little bit better than what the offense would indicate, or at least the outputs, right? And anybody who is like, "Oh, this disrespect," I feel like I'm defending Bo Nix more than like anybody else out there in the media outside of the city of Denver. And so I've been the one who has said like, "Hey, we're being way too hard on Bo Nix.
Yeah.
There are good things that are there, but it's just not a complete team." The offensive line struggled to start the season. They're clearly needing more in the passing attack when it comes to passing weapons. The run game is starting to come along. There's no doubt about it. But to me, the matchup that matters is on that side of the ball, because where the Chargers haven't faced the steepest level of competition in the best offenses, they are number 1 in the NFL right now with only 12.3 points allowed. Like Jim Harbaugh also coming in to coach this team along with Jesse Minter, their defensive coordinator. Like they have elevated the floor of this group and gotten the most out of some really talented veterans. Now you've got some guys that are, still banged up and not in the lineup, and I understand that from them, but to me, this is going to be a low-scoring slugfest. I think both of these teams are scoring less than 20 points in this game, and the margin for error for both of them is going to be so low. And I think it's just because of the hat tip that, obviously, I am glad the Broncos defense is getting the recognition that they deserve. But I also don't think the Chargers are quite getting the recognition they deserve from their defense as well. So it's going to be interesting to see, what Justin Herbert can be with this team. Does Patrick Surtain kind of like shadow Lad McConkey? Because if he does, like, man, who else is he really throwing the ball to? If you got Riley Moss on Quentin Johnson, okay, Quentin Johnson might win that from a size battle, but Riley Moss, obviously a really good athlete in his own right. So we've seen him make plays as soon as last week with the interception, but he's been doing this, I think, all season long, not just last game. So that's been really great for him. But I kind of wonder where the football is going with the Chargers offense if Surtain's able to totally take away, or maybe just a combination of their defenders able to take away Lad McConkey, but maybe get back to running the ball better the way that they did through the first 2 weeks of the season. I just think that's a major matchup that matters. It's the Chargers defense versus the Broncos offense, because the Broncos offense feels like it's been in more of a rhythm over the last couple of weeks. If it continues to be against this Chargers defense, then I think they can win the game. But if not, man, I think it's going to be a low-scoring pitcher's duel, as they say in baseball. But Herbert to me is my plus factor in this one for that reason. He hasn't been great so far this season. In fact, his PFF passing grade 55.4. I think the only one worse. No, there's only 2 quarterbacks that are worse: Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. So you don't expect to see Justin Herbert's name that low on a list, but he is. So that's my plus factor if he could play well.
Yeah, that was my plus factor too. I think we agree on that. I mean, the Chargers are averaging just 17 points a game. They have the 29th ranked offense, 31st ranked passing offense. They are averaging the 9th most rushing attempts, but I mean, they are like almost dead last in passing attempts. So it's just, or they are dead last in passing attempts, in fact. So if you can get this pass game going, I mean, that is going to unlock so many different things. If you can make this Chargers offense a little bit more dimensional rather than just kind of running the ball, they just haven't been productive either way. And if you can find a way to get Justin Herbert to do what he does best, which is throw the ball, I don't know who he's throwing to necessarily. This would be a great time. I think it's time for Lad McConkey to come on and be that dude for the Chargers offense. But like you said, if they match Pat Surtain up with him, I don't know that this is the week that it's going to happen. So it's going to be very interesting. The Denver defense is only averaging, letting up 19.2 points per game. So it's going to be really hard to do this.
Steelers Raiders, boy. Well, you might have to help us with this one. This one's in Las Vegas. What's the matchup that matters? I mean, there's a lot, and it's unfortunately like it feels like a lot of letdowns for both these teams. We got Aiden O'Connell now making the start, so he's a starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know how much they have, like at passing attack with Aiden O'Connell. So I mean, how much can you really expect of them? The Steelers' offense really looked like they were playing well, and then that Cowboys game and Sunday Night Football, it just looked like they didn't have any answers for anything really. But I'm curious, where does your mind go for a matchup that matters with the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Las Vegas Raiders?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I think, again, I kind of default to the trenches here because of can you allow Aiden O'Connell to do things? Can you protect him? Can this Raiders offensive line protect him against a Pittsburgh defensive line that's really, really good and getting so much production, by the way, out of 35-year-old Cam Hayward? I am 35 years old, Trevor. I crack when I get up out of bed. I cannot, like, I worked through a workout yesterday. I was like, oh, wait, I've got a twinge in my back. Like, 35 years old and being as productive as
we got to warm up. We got to warm up. You got to get the whole stretching routine.
I know. I'm stretching in my chair today afterwards. Like, it's all bad. And yet, Cam Hayward, among interior defensive linemen this season, 90.7 PFF grade, which ranks first. 83.7 run defense grade, first. 85.4 PFF pass rushing grade, which is second. 19 pressures, which ranks fifth among interior defensive linemen. I mean, this guy is so productive, and I haven't even talked about TJ Watt yet. So can you protect Aiden O'Connell from guys like that when the Raiders O-line ranks fourth worst, 60.1 PFF grade and 48.0 PFF run blocking grade, which is dead last. So if you want to try to run the ball, good luck. I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go for the Raiders in particular. Making the change at quarterback, again, also kind of getting rid of the gamesmanship of all of it. That speaks to, I think, the inexperience of Antonio Pierce as a head coach when you had the opportunity to say, well, we don't know who we're going to start between Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Like, you have two built-in quarterbacks, and it's something that Bruce Arians used to say all the time when I was with Tampa. If you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And that is so far the case for these Las Vegas Raiders. And they're going to get a really big test against this defensive line.
Yeah, I'll flip over to the other side because you're certainly your matchup that matters talks about how much the Raiders offense can kind of get going. I'm wondering with this Pittsburgh Steelers offense, I was praising Justin Fields for the progression that he has made as a player. Even as soon as last week. And I'm not letting one game against the Cowboys totally take away from that. But specifically, my matchup that matters is helping Fields out. And when I say helping Fields out, I mean, we got to figure out what the hell is going on with George Pickens here, because the answer that Mike Tomlin gave, where he's like, oh, we were just rotating wide receivers like we rotate, defensive linemen, keeping them fresh. That does not work. I mean, like that's not what you do, because when you look at Pickens' production, so the stem of this argument for anybody that missed it, George Pickens, and I'll get to his stats in a second, 34 offensive snaps last week against the Dallas Cowboys. Right. Calvin Austin had snaps in the 40s. Van Jefferson had snaps in the 40s. So both Calvin Johnson, they wish Calvin Johnson.
They wish, I was going to say.
Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson both outsnapped George Pickens in this past game. Pickens wasn't hurt. He just didn't get as many snaps as this guy. When you look at the statistics, Pickens has a 25.8 threat percentage. No other wide receiver has above a 12.5 this season. When you look at Pickens, 13 first down catches. Rest of the team combined has 7. Pickens, 310 receiving yards this season. Rest of the team combined, 232. You better figure it out with George Pickens, because there's no other answers here. For 2 weeks, we talked about, when Roman Wilson comes back, when Roman Wilson gets healthy. Roman Wilson's been a healthy scratch the last 2 weeks. So clearly they don't need him in the lineup or think that they need him in the lineup. So without Pickens, this is a totally limited offense, especially when it comes to the passing game. And you could say to yourself, all right, well then, maybe they could run the ball a little bit more if they don't want to have Pickens in the game, if there's something going on, in the locker room or his relationship with the head coach. Carmen, they can't run the ball any more than they are right now. The third in the NFL in rushing attempts at 165, and yet after having the volume of third in total rushing attempts, they're 23rd in EPA per rush, they're 23rd in yards after contact per attempt, and they're 27th in yards before contact per attempt.
Not great.
What's going on with the offense? If you don't figure out with George Pickens, I don't know what this offense has. I really don't, even for as well as Justin Fields is playing. And I can already see myself getting mad because of the Steelers' offense looks you know, very lukewarm again this week. People are going to blame Justin Fields. They're going to put Russell Wilson in. And I'm just going to go, it's not Fields' fault. I mean, maybe it'll be Fields' fault, but like at this point in time, I wouldn't say that it's Fields' fault. So I'm kind of frustrated with that. They got to figure it out with George Pickens because they don't have anybody else right now. Plus factor for me though, I'll flip to the other side. It's Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers. I mean, you talk about the Raiders need some sort of spark. I mean, it's got to come through this guy. When you look at Brock Bowers, it's just more of the same of the elite play that he had when he was at Georgia over the 3 straight years that he was there. 82.7 PFF grade, that's first among tight ends. 35 targets, first. 28 catches, first. 313 yards, first. 166 yards after the catch is second only to Tucker Kraft. 15 catches gaining a first down, that's first. 6 catches of 15 yards or more, that's tied for second. I mean, what can't this rookie do? Brock Bowers was unbelievable. You wondered in the draft, it was like, oh, how high do you take a tight end? He is an ultimate offensive weapon for this team, and especially without Devontae Adams, he is a major star for them. So he is my big-time plus factor for this one. He could just be a game wrecker for 2 offenses that might struggle.
Yeah, I adore Brock Bowers. I actually really had the Bears being interested in him with that number 9 pick that they instead took Romadunze with because of the fact that Shane Waldron loves to use tight ends. Mm-hmm. And we've seen Cole Kmet be a bit of a safety blanket for Caleb Williams. And I can't help but think what would have happened if Brock Bowers was instead the safety net for Caleb Williams with a secondary threat in Cole Kmet. Back to this game and back to a former Bear, I suppose my plus factor is Justin Fields for a lot of the reasons that you outlined before, where we need to see more production out of this offense. The thing with George Pickens just baffles me, given the fact that, all right, you don't rotate your best receiver out like that. Even if you don't target him, you leave him on the field to make a defense pay attention to him, to open things up for your other guys. It doesn't make any sense in the world to pull George Pickens off the field entirely, even if you're not throwing him the ball necessarily all the time. But I think the biggest thing with Justin Fields in Chicago was, who is he throwing to? Does he have enough weapons? This, that, and the other. And it's kind of the same thing all over again, despite the fact that the Steelers do have the weapons to help support Justin Fields and what he wants to do. And honestly, Fields has been really good this season on 10 or more throws of 10 or more yards, and 384 yards on such throws. 2 touchdowns have come. The completion percentage isn't exactly there, but I have to think that would go up if you have George Pickens in the game a lot more. Intermediate throws, 10 for 17, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns there too. So kind of those 10 to 19 yard throws, Justin Fields is doing really well at. And I have to think that George Pickens factors into that. But what you need to see from Justin Fields is that he can go out there and he can win you a game. And that's not something that we've been able to see from him quite yet. And that's kind of that's why that there's still a discourse on what it means that Russell Wilson is healthy now. That's still why there's a discourse on if Russell Wilson is going to come in. Fields has not won the starting job outright. He started the season for the Pittsburgh Steelers because Russell Wilson was injured. And again, I wonder if he tries to force some things in this game, knowing that Russell Wilson is now healthy and breathing down his neck, if Justin Fields is the one that starts this game, in fact. So I'm really concerned about kind of that competition, I guess. I'm not a fan. We've just talked about it. You have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. And I saw this in Tampa, in fact, with Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick, if you recall that season, where these guys would try. Yes, I'm sure you do. Sure, we both do very, very vividly. Because these guys would go out there and every chance they got, they tried to force things and they tried to prove that they were the starter. And in trying to force things, there were so many mistakes made. And it was just this carousel and rotation of who, comes in, has the spark, then he drops off, gets replaced. That guy comes in, has a spark, drops off, gets replaced. This is not something you want, especially when the Steelers already had a revolving door at quarterback last year. Why do you want to make that the case this year again? So Justin Fields really is going to not only matter a great deal to this Pittsburgh Steelers offense and what they can get going when they're going to have an opportunity to go against a team in the Raiders that has the worst coverage grade of any unit in the league. But it's also going to go a long way in saying, no, I started this season. I'm going to continue being the starter this season when you have a healthy, experienced quarterback in Russell Wilson waiting in the wings.
Falcons, Panthers. is the next game that I want to get to. Divisional matchup. We got two NFC South divisional matchups here. This is the second one. Afternoon slate. This is a 4:25 Eastern kickoff. My matchup that matters here, again, I was able to find sort of a hipster stat here because I was very curious about this, and I stumbled upon something that I thought was very interesting.
Okay.
It's the Panthers pass rush versus Kirk Cousins specifically. And there's some factors at play here. One, the Panthers pass rush is not great. It's just not. It is not a fear defensive line. They're not getting after the quarterback. They're not getting sacks. They've got a low pass rush win percentage as a team. They're not getting pressures. It's just not one that's really going to. I mean, we saw it against Chicago. I mean, Chicago. Caleb Williams had a time to throw above 3 seconds for the first time in his NFL career. It was below 3 seconds for the 4 previous games, and against the Panthers. I'm not gonna lie. He probably just thought, I don't need to move anywhere. I can hold on to the ball a little bit longer. Yep. And he absolutely shredded him for it. So one would think that the Panthers pass rush is not going to be good in this game. But Carmen, if they are, this specifically is a very interesting matchup against Kirk Cousins because I think a lot of people think about Kirk as, okay, pretty high floor when it comes to how he plays versus pressure. Not an escape artist, not somebody who's going to run to the sideline like a Josh Allen or a Jaden Daniels or something like that. But he navigates pressure pretty well. And specifically, if you get pressure on him, he knows where the ball needs to go very quickly to get it out of his hands. So you're not getting a sack, you're not getting a pass breakup, you're not really affecting the throw. But when it comes to when he is pressured and when he is not, if there's no pressure on the play, Kirk Cousins has an 81.2 passing grade and only 1 turnover-worthy play. That is the best mark or least amount of turnover-worthy plays of any of the full-time starting quarterbacks in the NFL this season when he is kept clean. When he is pressured, and again, we think about Cousins as somebody who knows what to do under pressure, doesn't panic under pressure, doesn't put the ball in his harm's way under pressure. 7 turnover-worthy plays already. We're 5 games into the season. He's got 7 turnover-worthy plays when he is pressured. That is second most in the NFL. So the floor of what Kirk Cousins presents to you when you are pressured is way lower than what it normally has been throughout his career. So if there is a world where the Panthers pass rush can actually really affect and get pressure on Kirk Cousins, he has been giving the ball away. And in a matchup where you think, okay, coming off of that win against the Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football, Falcons should win this football game. You get 1 or 2 extra turnovers here because of pressure, all bets are off. Yep. So to me, that's how the Panthers really change the script in this game. Can they somehow get after Kirk Cousins because he has been known to give the ball away so far this season?
And that has to deal with his injury as well. Like you see that he's kind of avoiding planting on the foot with the injured Achilles, and you just have to think that that's a really hard injury to come back from. And granted, he's bounced back a lot better than some other guys that had an Achilles injury last year. But I really do think that that kind of enters into why this year he's just a little bit more skittish when it comes to getting hit. Whereas he really wasn't when he was with the Vikings in particular, because in the early goings of that, he was getting hit a lot and still delivering the ball, stepping up, doing all that stuff in the pocket that made him so good against pressure. So I think it's a really good call out by you. And then I'm going to give you kind of an opportunity that Andy Dalton has on the other side of all of this. And that's Andy Dalton against Atlanta's third down defense in particular, because Atlanta ranks dead last, allowing teams to convert on 48.53% of third downs. So now you have the opportunity to convert and stay on the field and extend drives. The average time of possession for the Atlanta Falcons is just 26 minutes and 14 seconds, which is the second worst because their defense cannot get off the field. And in that case, then Andy Dalton is going to have opportunities to sustain drives, to score points. And it's against also an Atlanta defense that isn't getting the sacks. They're not getting pressure. They have 5 sacks so far this season, which is dead last, tied with the Bengals of all teams. And they have the third fewest pressures this season at 54. Their leaders, Grady Jarrett, 10 pressures, Matthew Judon, 9 pressures. But it's just not a unit that you really have to worry about when it comes to, all right, can I hold the ball? Can I let these longer routes develop? Can I stay on the field? Can I sustain drives? Can I score points? Andy Dalton is going to have the opportunity to do just that because of the different phases of this Atlanta defense that are just deficient right now.
Yeah, no, I think those are all good call outs. I think that on the Panthers side of things, my big plus factor for how they're going to play on offense, you talked about Andy Dalton. I'm going to talk about Chuba Hubbard, who
Yeah.
I think deserves some recognition here. The only player with more rushing yards than Hubbard over the last 3 weeks is Derrick Henry. And if he got through, if Hubbard got 3 more rushing yards last week, it would have been 3 straight 100-yard games. So amidst the offensive struggles and the offensive roller coaster that it has been in Carolina this season with the changing quarterbacks and then Dalton coming out hot and then it's slowing down a little bit, Chuba Hubbard over the last 3 weeks has been someone that they have been able to rely upon heavily. We've seen them rely upon him in the passing game as well as a receiver. And so to me, he's a big time plus factor in this game because if you can run the ball the way that you want to, and we've seen that this Carolina offensive line has given them the ability to do that, you can control the clock a little bit. You can keep this game close. And again, at that point, if you're keeping the game close, getting into the second half, the third quarter, the fourth quarter, sometimes it is just that extra possession, maybe an extra turnover. Does the ball bounce your way here and there? And you can come up with an upset at home against that divisional opponent. So as long as Hubbard is rushing the ball well, I've got faith that Carolina can at least hang in this thing and give them a chance before the clock strikes 0. So who's your plus factor in this one?
Yeah, it was Chuba Hubbard because I do think that adds another dynamic, it just adds another level to this Panthers offense. And honestly, this offensive line, I think, deserves a lot more credit than we're giving it because they were one of the worst units in the league last year. They did not do Bryce Young any favors. And this year they came out and they have been a lot better. I mean, are they the best offensive line in the league? No, but they are 6th in pass blocking grade. They rank 13th in overall offensive line grade, 70.7 PFF grade. Ahead of week 6. So this is a vastly improved unit that is allowing the team to run the ball. And when you factor in the fact that Chuba Hubbard can also get yards after contact, he's actually got 63 rushing yards after contact, which ranks 7th in the league.
Yep.
So it's one of those things where, yes, the offensive line is better in opening up things for Chuba Hubbard, but he is also doing his part when it comes to getting those hard-fought yards and getting yards after contact, which makes a huge difference for this Carolina offense if they can remain, have dimensions to this offense, not only have Andy Dalton there, but really get something going on the ground. And I think that they have an opportunity to do that. This is going to be, and plus it's a division matchup. So, and those are always weird.
Lions at Cowboys. We said that this would not be the last time that we talked about Aiden Hutchinson, and we weren't lying. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But, Carmen, your matchup that matters here for this afternoon matchup between two teams who were going into the season, I think both had aspirations to make it to the NFC Championship game. At this point, I feel like the Cowboys would just be happy somehow making it in as a wild card, but there's a lot of season left to play. They haven't played great, but what is a matchup that you think either of these teams are going to look to exploit here in this one?
Well, we know that the offense has struggled in Dallas, but the sneaky kind of deficiency on this Dallas defense is their run defense. And this Dallas front seven going against Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, who make up, I think, the best backfield tandem in the league. You now go against a team where Marshawn Kneeland is out. Eric Kendricks didn't practice on Wednesday. Micah Parsons is working through injury. The Dallas's run defense gave up 190 yards to New Orleans. They gave up 270 to Baltimore this year. They have the highest EPA per play allowed versus the run. And Detroit is averaging 151.3 yards on the ground per game. That's the 6th best mark in the league, and they have the 3rd best EPA per play on the ground. So this is a really big strength of this Ben Johnson offense in Detroit is getting to run the ball. I mean, Jared Goff is getting a lot of praise, rightfully so, coming off a near perfect game, but it's because he also has all of these weapons to call on and an offensive backfield to rely on so that even if he's not passing the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown or Sam Laporta or Jahmyr Gibbs in space for that matter, you can get something going and really kind of control the clock, again, sustain these drives, stay on the field. And Dallas has just not been good against the run so far this season,
right?
Compounded with the injuries that they now have in their front seven. This is a huge opportunity for Detroit to exploit.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the Cowboys can't win this game. And in fact, my matchup that matters kind of talks about that, but it's really hard to lean into the Cowboys, even at home, even coming off a win, because their greatest weakness is the Lions' greatest strength. Like, it's how the Lions want to win football games: be physical, be up front, be able to run the ball. And if the Cowboys do not have their best game yet in run defense, I don't know how many scripts exist for them to outscore this Lions team, especially when you compound that with, okay, if they run the ball really well, the Cowboys are going to have to respond. They're going to have to put more guys in the box. And then Ben Johnson's going to be able to, what we think, have his way with you in the passing game as a good play caller as well. But a matchup that matters to me is something that the Cowboys are doing well this season, and that is deep passes. They have 34 passes of 15 yards or more. That's second most in the NFL behind only the Houston Texans. And it's pretty evenly distributed. CeeDee Lamb's got 7. Jalen Tolbert's got 6. Jake Ferguson's got 5. And so they just want to push the ball deep down the field, and they've got some different weapons to do it. Now, the Lions, they're not like, it's not like a total weakness for them, but they have allowed 23 receptions to 15 yards or more. That's 13th most in the NFL so far this season. Carlton Davis has allowed 7. Terran Arnold has allowed 6. So I wonder if Dallas is really going to go after those two guys when specifically they're looking to target deep down the field, because it has been a major part of what they have needed with the run game not having that kind of consistency. It's a lot on Dak's shoulders, and I think that's the reason why we see those stats simply from a volume perspective. But it is an area where, with the Lions probably running the ball at will in this game, can the Cowboys make up for it by being as explosive as we have seen them be throughout the year against defenses that are not as good as the Lions overall? Are they able to do that still while they are at home? So to me, that's sort of the script they need to have, is continuing to be that explosive passing offense to be able to match what the Lions we think are going to be as a rushing attack. I see that we both have the same plus factor here, so I will let you go first, and then I'll piggyback off of whatever stats maybe you didn't read about Aiden Hutchinson himself.
Well, I also want to point out my other one that could affect this, which goes off of what you were just saying in Dallas wanting to have an explosive passing attack. Brian Branch could be back for the Detroit Lions, which matters a great deal for the secondary, just given the ways that they can use him and the help that he can give to these outside corners. He's just a do-it-all player in the backfield that Aaron Glenn has a time with, as far as what he's able to do and how he schemes him up. But the plus factor is Aiden Hutchinson. And welcome, Dave. There is so much to say about just how much of a tear Hutch is on. He leads the league in pressures with 40. That's 11 more than any other player. 93.8 PFF grade, which is first among edge defenders. 94.2 pass rushing grade, first among defensive linemen in general. I mean, it's absolutely insane. His 40 pressures, obviously, since they lead the league, they lead the Lions. The next guy down the list is Levi Onwuzurike, 16 pressures. So, which is great for an interior guy. Like, I'm not hating on Levi by any stretch of the imagination, but it just speaks to how ridiculous Aiden Hutchinson is. And Dallas has allowed 49 pressures as an offensive line group, which ranks 14th. So this is really the potential to just be a game wrecker. And the way that they use Aiden Hutchinson in so many different ways, he lines up all over the line. He can do, like, he can even line up off the line of scrimmage and then, like, on delayed blitzes come in, or he had a couple interceptions last year even. I mean, this is a guy that he's building up his toolbox as he's a pro, and it shows, whether it's the way that he uses his hands at the line, or again, developing these insane skills when it comes to dropping into coverage that Aaron Glenn isn't afraid to do with him now. I mean, it's an incredible story. He's just been dominant and gotten better amazingly every season he's been in the league. And this is just, he's an absolute game wrecker, and there's really no answers for him. Even if you double team him, all that kind of stuff, he's beaten these guys outright. Aaron Glenn knows how to scheme him up to get him away from those double teams and really exploit some matchups along, opposing offensive lines. And I expect them to do that against an offensive line that, in Dallas, where you're starting multiple rookies and I don't know, Tyler Guyton, I don't know. I don't have the injury report in front of me. But if he's healthy, if he's doing okay, It could be a field day for Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, Delton saying in the chat, like, hey, those numbers for Hutchinson are inflated. And sure, I guess a little bit because he's been going up against backups. But, just to go into this matchup, Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele, both of them are bottom 10 in the NFL in terms of offensive tackles when it comes to pressures allowed. So it's not like it's, a great matchup here. And he can only play the guys that are in front of him. He's been absolutely wrecking the guys in front of him. And you talked about how Aaron Glenn's been able to scheme up Aiden Hutchinson. He's done an excellent job making it so it's so difficult to chip him or double team him, or he'll make you pay if the running back is just looking to his side at all times. And so they're doing a great job, not only making sure they emphasize Hutchinson's just overall talent, but aligning him in the right spots. It's a talent plus scheme, compounding of results that you are seeing from the pressures and what Hutchinson has been able to do. We got two more games. We got Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football that we were previewing here on the show. But before we get to those, got to remind you guys that this podcast is brought to you by Cherry Bundy, the performance drink that is fueling the Healthlete revolution. This thing is fantastic when it comes to recovery for any sort of active lifestyle. It's got great natural products, no added sugar. The tart cherries, they're the highest antioxidant fruit and vegetable in the world. The natural inflammatories got great benefits. It'll reduce soreness. It can increase recovery time. It can just increase recovery. I should say decrease recovery time with the increased recovery help. It'll help support immunity. If you're not feeling so well, it'll help improve the sleep with the naturally occurring melatonin. Used by almost 500 collegiate and professional sports teams. Every single team in the NFL uses it. 10 of the last 11 Super Bowl champions have used it while they've been on their Super Bowl runs. NCAA, it's been used for every single NCAA football and basketball national champion since 2007. And now it can help you with whatever your active lifestyle is as well. Check them out. Cherry Bundy, their products are available at Amazon, cherrybundy.com, and also retailers like Publix, Kroger. You can check that out as well. So if you're any sort of athlete, whether it's, like me and Carmen, you got to make sure that you stretch for 30 minutes before you even think about picking up a weight, like it's good for you too. Maybe it'll make the recovery a little bit better. Maybe you can wake up a little bit more and not have the cracks like it feels like we do every time that we try to make it through a workout. But check it out at cherrybundy.com. All right, let's get to... It's personal endorsement. Let's get to Sunday Night Football here. The Cincinnati Bengals, no doubt about it, just having a disappointing season. It even seems when they are firing all cylinders, something is letting them down, and they are not able to win these games. They have currently, I believe, a top 5 draft pick if the season were to end today. They're taking on the New York Giants at home, coming off of a major win across the country against the Seattle Seahawks. Carmen, I'm very curious, what is the matchup that matters most here for Bengals versus Giants?
Trevor, I'm so mad at this Bengals defense. I'm so mad.
They're getting in the way of a great Bengals offense.
A great Bengals offense. Like, there are doubters out there now doubting Joe Burrow, despite the fact that he is on an absolute tear right now. I mean, just an absolutely incredible run. He is more efficient than like any quarterback. He's scoring the most amount of points that he possibly can. You've got Jamar Chase involved. You got T. Higgins involved. You got Andre Yoshivas involved. I'm so mad at this Bengals defense because if they were just even average, this is a completely different story for the Bengals season thus far. And to illustrate that, I talked about how Atlanta is really bad on third down. The Bengals are really bad on third down. They're 31st in the league in third down rate. They have just 5 sacks on the season, which is tied for last also with the Atlanta Falcons. And the Giants' offensive line is not going to be a test, or really shouldn't. They have a 65.3 pass blocking grade. That ranks 23rd in the league. If the Bengals defense cannot get pressure on Daniel Jones, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't want to be out on the Bengals quite yet because I do believe in Joe Burrow and I believe in this offense. And when you're averaging almost 30 points a game, I don't understand why you're not winning. And truth be told, I mean, the Bengals have been in every game that they've played. They've played really hard teams, really tough. That loss to the Chiefs was just like, it was so disappointing. I was so excited for that game. I thought, Bengals could really make something happen here, and it didn't happen. It was just a heartbreaking game earlier in the season, and so and that's kind of been the way that I've looked at the Bengals every game since, was just like, oh, if they can just win this game right against the Ravens, same thing. I'm like, oh God, like they have to win some of these games that are going to be tough fought games, but this should not be one of them. So they absolutely have to win this game against the Giants. The Bengals are playing a fourth place schedule, given what happened last year and the injury to Joe Burrow. Take advantage of that, please, and win this game against the Giants. I need this Denver pass or this Bengals pass rush to please get involved. Just get involved. I don't even want to like overload this with stats because it's just too depressing. I really need Trey Hendrickson is doing fine, but he's not getting a lot of help and it's showing. They are getting Sheldon Rankins back though. They are getting Sheldon Rankins back.
It's good. No, I think the matchup that matters is simply, I'm overlooking the defense at this point. I am. I'm looking at like, okay, I'm gonna stop saying I need the Bengals defense to show up. It is simply, can the Bengals offense overcome it? And can they do that specifically against the Giants defensive backs? Defensive backs for the Giants, 66.3 coverage grades, 14th best in the NFL. Deontay Banks had a really good week last week. I think they're getting Drew Phillips. I think Drew Phillips is back in the starting lineup. I believe I saw that correctly.
It's hard doing this on Thursday when you don't have all the injury information.
But anyways, Drew Phillips, when he was playing, he was playing very, very well. So if he's a factor, if he's out there in this game, I think he's going to be a factor, even from a rookie player. He's going to play really, really well, and they need him because Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, they're just simply two of the best in the NFL. Jamar Chase, 234 yards after the catch, is first in the NFL. 493 receiving yards overall, second in the NFL. T. Higgins, he's already got 13 catches, gaining a first down, 4 contested catches, 2 of 15 yards or more. These guys, and what Joe Burrow is doing with them as a passing attack trio, there's just not better right now in the NFL, and they're showcasing that, and yet they have a 1-4 record to show for it. If the Bengals drop to 1-5, you're right. It's sort of like, I know Giants fans are probably going to be mad listening to this because they're like, why are you rooting for like the Bengals to win? And it's like, I'm not necessarily rooting against the Giants. I feel bad in that regard, but if the Bengals go 1-5, that's basically it. Like I don't, there's basically no room for error at that point. You have to go, what would that be? What would that be after that? That would be 9-2 to like realistically have a chance to make the playoffs at that point in the AFC. So the margin for error is already very small, and this is a fun offense, and it's going to add that. I think the team's going to unravel if they were to lose this game. But hey, I will give props to the Giants again, going into Seattle and playing the way that they did to come away with that win was huge. And I think the defensive line played a lot better as well. We don't have either of those as our matchup that matters, but the Giants defensive line with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence, they played a lot better as a group. And what the Giants offense was able to do without Malik Nabers was really awesome. What Darius Slayton's production was, and then specifically my plus factor in this game, Tyrone Tracy, what he was for the Giants last week, giving them some juice out of the backfield. Specifically, there was a Tyrone Tracy stat that I loved amongst him having 129 rushing yards on only 18 carries. 4 explosive plays of 10 yards or more. And Carmen, 3 out of those 4 explosive runs came on first down. So it's a down where, okay, the other team, they're probably expecting a run. It's 1st and 10. Most likely, you're probably going to run the football, or at least we're going to be ready for it. That's what I should say.
Yeah.
When you can immediately gain 10 yards on 1st and 10, changes things, kind of freaks the defense out a little bit. They don't really know what to do. Okay, well, whatever we were set up in before didn't work here. And he was able to do that 3 separate times in the game. Not just set up a second and manageable or a third and manageable, get a first down on the ground on first down. And to me, like that, just the psychological battle that you win as much as moving the chains means a lot. And I think that's the extra juice that Tyrone Tracy brings to the table. So, I again, it's one of those things where I would hate to see the Bengals at 1-5, but man, if the Giants can string together 2 wins, one against Seattle on the road and the other against a potent passing attack against the Bengals, my hat would be off to what Brian Daboll is doing there for them as well. What is your plus factor here in this one?
Yeah, I'm doubling down on the Bengals defensive line because they are conceivably getting Sheldon Rankins back, which he went down in week 2 with a hamstring injury. Cincinnati in week 1, granted it's a very small sample size, but they had the 2nd highest pressure percentage of any team in week 1 with Sheldon Rankins on the field, helping out Trey Hendrickson on the outside. That offered a more complete picture of what this Bengals defensive line and defense in general was supposed to look like. If you get him back, Hopefully he can be a boost. Hopefully he can get pressure on that interior because you're going to need it. So it's just as simple for me as the Bengals will win this game. And again, you're right. I don't want to I'm sorry, Giants fans, that this is coming against you. It's literally nothing personal. It's just that I don't want to have to be out on Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And I want to see them continue on this season and not have to climb themselves out of a nearly impossible hole. And in order to do that, you just need the defense to play average. Average. I'm not asking for the world here. Just get a little bit of pressure, put some pressure on Daniel Jones. You're going to have the opportunity to do that. Please do.
Our Cincinnati-based producers also agree with you in that regard. Okay, let's get to the last game that we're talking about here. It's Monday Night Football. This one got a whole hell of a lot more interesting, not only just because the winner of it gets possession of first place in the division, but also the fact that it's Bills Jets and Robert Saleh, no longer head coach of the team. Jeff Ulbricht's now the interim head coach of the team, and Nathaniel Hackett no longer calling plays. Todd Downing is calling plays here. And I'll start this one off. And I'll start it off with the Jets offense. I'm stealing some stats here from Dalton Wasserman, who brought these up on the grades release show on Monday. But they are such a telling tale for the Jets. I had to repeat it here as truly the matchup that matters. And that is the Jets being able to start the game and start drives a lot quicker than they have been this season. When you look at PFF offensive grades for the Jets in the first quarter, they're dead last in the NFL. The first drive of the game, they're 30th in the NFL. First 15 plays, so scripted plays, first 15 plays, dead last in the NFL in offensive grade. And then first play of the drive, just 1st and 10, we're starting a drive. Overall offensive grade, 29th. They are bottom 3, if not dead last in every single category when it comes to starting the game out hot. And I think that kind of goes into the defending maybe the decision to move on from Robert Saleh, because they just aren't ready. They don't have the juice, the focus, the drive, whatever it is, to execute the way that they need to out of the gate. And like we saw against the Minnesota Vikings, it was almost like it was just too little too late. If they started that game in the second half, instead of the first half, and they were able to kind of build off of what we saw there, Jets may win that football game. But it's the fact that they are not able to play offense at the start of really anything, any drive, any quarter, certainly the first quarter, that's really been holding them back. And so with Todd Downing now calling plays, you're hoping it's a lot more potent if you are a Jets fan, not if you're a Bills fan, of course, in this one. But to me, that's the matchup that matters, is can the Jets offense look different now that changes have been made? What about you?
No, that's a great call out, especially because, the first 15 plays are usually scripted, and that comes from Nathaniel Hackett, but that also comes from Aaron Rodgers, if we know anything about how much input that he has on this offense, on the game plan, even when there is, maybe it speaks to actually like who Aaron Rodgers is as a quarterback, given the fact that when they get going, Aaron Rodgers changes plays a lot when it comes, like he'll get the play in the headset or whatever, and he will change it. That's part of why playing in an offense with him is really hard for a lot of young receivers or guys that haven't played with him for a while, because there's so many different outs and checks and audibles that he can pull. Sometimes even just changing a route, not in the entire play. Like Aaron Rodgers is really good at doing that. And maybe that speaks to the fact that they get better as the game goes on. It's what Aaron Rodgers is seeing. But going along with that, if we look at this game against the Vikings, it really mattered. Like, I was very interested to see how Aaron Rodgers was going to fare against this Brian Flores defense that no one has been able to figure out. And in fact, he threw 3 interceptions through the 5th pick 6 of his career. That's it. He's only thrown 5, and that was the 5th one in his 20-year career. And what the Vikings defense does so well, and what they did so well, was the amount of movement up front, especially early. Aaron Rodgers was talking about this on the Pat McAfee show, but we've seen it time and time again where there's a lot of movement up front, and that confuses an offensive line, that confuses anybody trying to set protections, because you're setting protections against a guy that isn't acting as you think he's going to act. And can the Bills defensive line do the same thing against this Jets offensive line? And not to mention, this Bills defensive line doesn't have Von Miller anymore. So the Jets offensive line has allowed 44 pressures in pass protection. That's 16th. They're very average. Their overall grade, 69.0. That's also 16th. Again, very average. They're 19th in pass blocking grade, 17th in run blocking grade. This is an offensive line that is vulnerable in a lot of ways. And can the Bills defense capitalize on that? Now, Greg Rousseau has the most pressures on this Bills defensive line. Von Miller had the second most. You're without him. Ed Oliver then comes in at 9, AJ Epinesa 8. I just wonder, can you take advantage? Can you kind of emulate what Brian Flores' defense did that was so incredibly effective against this Jets offensive line in particular, in moving guys around, bringing pressure from different areas, and really kind of confusing the ever-loving you-know-what out of them? Because Aaron Rodgers is the best at recognizing stuff, but if you can kind of keep changing things up, I think that not only the Bills defensive line, but the Bills front seven in general, can you get everybody involved here? I think that could be really effective.
I'll flip to the other side when and talking about the Bills offense as my plus factor here. Don't know if Khalil Shakir is going to play. He missed last week, and man, they sorely missed him. And when we talk about some of those Josh Allen numbers, 0 for 13 when it came to throws under pressure, 0 for 6 on passive 20 or more yards down the field, 1 for 14 on passive just 10 or more yards down the field. Now, I'm not saying if Khalil Shakir plays, those are magically all at 50% or above. We know that that wouldn't have been the case, but he would have been able to catch a couple more of those, and we see those stats because when he is targeting Khalil Shakir has the highest QBR on the team when he is targeted, 144.0. That is by far the highest of any of those wide receivers. And he has by far the highest completion percentage when thrown to as well at 85.7. And so it's very clear. When I watched Josh Allen struggle last week, it was like, man, he just didn't quite have that chemistry with each of those wide receivers when it came to those non-separation type throws. And outside of Shakir, a lot of those wide receiver options that they have on the team, the tight ends included, they're contested catch players. They're players that aren't really going to create a big time throwing window for you. And Shakir can. So we'll see if he's able to play. It looks like he's ramping up to play, but he's still kind of working on his own. So we will see, but they really need him. And I think it's a major difference in the offense, whether he plays or not. I don't think it would look as bad as it looked last week if he doesn't play, but it's certainly a factor because in my opinion, he has the best rapport with Josh Allen, and him not being in the lineup, you definitely saw that. But what do you think? What's a plus factor here?
It's so funny because we can look at the same stats, and I looked at all of that, seeing Josh Allen struggle against pressure and arrive at different conclusions as to how to remedy that. And my conclusion was get James Cook more involved. I think we thought that this offense was going to rely a lot on James Cook, not only on the ground, but to be that check down option for Josh Allen to get away from pressure, to give him a quick out, to give him a reliable guy. And up until this point, James Cook has only had one game where he's gone over 100 scrimmage yards. And that's not exactly the envision. Like, I did not envision that for this Bills offense that does have a lot of new, that had a lot of departures in both Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. I thought, hey, all right, I know Josh Allen is Josh Allen, but James Cook can be a factor in this receiving game on top of being that guy that you can lean on in the backfield. And we just haven't seen that usage quite yet. So in looking at, yes, how much Josh Allen was bothered under pressure, couldn't get the ball out at all, why not give him a short to intermediate option in James Cook, who is a good receiver, he's a good pass catching back. And I think that's, at least for me, that's what I envisioned for this Bills offense when this season started.
I think it's a good call out by you. Getting James Cook more involved is a big time thing. That it's a big time part of the offense that I feel like they're missing. Certainly as the game was winding down last week, they probably in hindsight wish they gave James Cook the ball a little bit more, but we're not digging that up. I do think that even independent of what happened last week, they need to get him more involved because he is a talented player for them. There we go. 14 games up and down previewed here for week 6 in the NFL. If you don't have yourself a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one by going over to pff.com and check out all of the premium stats and so much more that we talked about here on this show. Appreciate everybody watching and listening to the program. That's Carmen Vitali. I'm Trevor Sikkema. We will see you guys same time next week to preview week 7 right here on PFF's YouTube channel. See you guys then.